The question is, we oscillate between being committed and not committed, and how to deal with that. Is that a fair summary of it? Let me think about this. I mean, there's two answers I can give you. The answer I experienced 25 or 30 years ago and the way I've come to think about it now. I spend a lot of time being at war with myself. And when I wasn't doing what I thought I should be doing, it wasn't merely that I wasn't doing the right thing, but I was also incredibly upset about it. And I was also under the impression that if I just got mad enough at myself, then I would be different. That I had this feeling that there was a much better version of me that was somehow being held hostage in the closet. And if I just was mean and angry enough at this one, that at a certain point this one would say, "Oh, ha ha," and it would just go over and open the closet, and then the other one would come out. And there was an extraordinary day, just before, it was around when I was about 40. And I'd been on the path since I was 18, so that was, a long time. It was a wonderful day and it was a terrible day, because I realized this is it. There's no better me. This is the me. And what I keep trying to reject as the parts of me that doesn't buckle down and do it properly is just simply what I am. And it was very liberating, because it told me that there was no point anymore in being mad at myself all the time. And it was also profoundly distressing, because, oh my God, this is it. I mean, this is really me. So it's an odd thing, because we also have to motivate ourselves. We can't just fall back asleep and say this is good enough. So that's sort of why I was emphasizing, part of the reason I'm emphasizing, which is I'm just going to persevere. And I know that Swami Kriyananda said, and Yogananda says, you should try to become a Jivan Mukta, you should try to become liberated. That's way too much pressure for me. I'm in no position to refute anything that those teachers say, so I'm not going to say it, but it's way too much pressure for me, because I have had and still have that same oscillation. And so I realized that the oscillating was really not nearly as big a problem as my own constant dissatisfaction to the point of despair over who I actually was. That because I will get it straight. And to balance that also, at one point, Swami Kriyananda never flattered us, and he never tried to win us by telling us we were wonderful or anything like that. So you could always trust him. He told you the truth. He was very supportive, but he didn't lavish praise on us. And I was with him once, and there were 4 or 5 people in the room, and he started complimenting. He started sort of commenting about people's strengths. He didn't seem to notice me, so I made myself bigger so that he would see me. And then he looked at me and he said, "Well, Asha, you're very sincere." I felt I had been damned with faint praise, if there ever was such a thing. And it just plunged me into a real bad space. And after a week or so, because I saw Swami almost every day at that point, he said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Well, you told this one they were doing so well at that, and that one they were doing so well at this, and you told me that I was sincere." I mean, it just seemed like that. And Swami was genuinely shocked. And he said, "Asha, sincerity is everything." Now, it's taken me decades to really understand what he meant by that, which is, well, I'll tell you the part where I learned it in South Korea in the airport. Not that I've ever gotten out of the airport in South Korea, but I was in the airport. I was flying to India all by myself, which was the first time I traveled there by myself. I had a layover in South Korean Seoul, South Korea. I'm in the airport. I have several hours waiting for the next flight, all by myself, and then I start fantasizing. Yogananda predicted that there would be great earth changes and there would be conflicts and so on. So I imagine, what if everything changes at this moment and I never get out of South Korea? I have to spend the rest of my life here and I don't know a soul. I don't know a soul. I don't know a soul in Seoul. I don't know the language, I don't know the customs, nothing. And I have a very vivid imagination and I have nobody to talk to, so I'm going through this. And so I think, okay, so if I have to spend the rest of my life here, what will I do? And I think, well, when immigrants come, even highly educated immigrants come to a new country and don't speak the language, they become hotel maids, right? So I decided I would become a hotel maid. I didn't think if it was the end of the world that there wouldn't be a lot of people coming in and staying in hotels, but I missed that part. So in my imagination, I become a hotel maid. I gradually learn the language. I gradually learn the customs. I make my home. And then I would open an Ananda center. And it was all just, but I realized, oh my gosh, this is who I am. And even if I vacillate, I will never give up. Because I'm not putting this on. This is sincerity. This is who I am. And those words in my head from decades before, Asha, sincerity is everything. So we're always measuring ourselves. That's the definition of Maya. The Sanskrit word for this delusion is the measurer. Am I doing well? Am I doing badly? Am I doing badly? Am I doing well? And we spend all this energy instead of saying, well, yesterday was a bad day. Maybe today will be better. But I'm not going to give up. And then you can really start inching forward. And being at the age that I am, where if I die now or at any point, it will not be premature, it might be a surprise, but it won't be premature. The single most important thing is I just need to be at peace and I need to be happy. Because heaven knows, I tortured myself for enough decades. I don't want to start over on that one, that's for sure. I'd rather, Master said to me, well, honey, you could have done a lot more Kriyas. Yep, you got that one. Yeah, that's true. But for me to just be at peace with it is far more important than anything else, because then I'm not wasting any energy fighting against reality. So I have a mantra that I've used a lot recently. Guess what? I'm not that good. What do you know? I'm just not that good. And nobody's surprised. You think that, well, even your friends know. I mean, people try to put on, everybody knows. And trust me, they know. And they not only love us, they like us. And they think it's cute just like a little child. One of my friends, her little boy, when he was about 4, he walked in and he said, I didn't do nothing wrong, Mommy. And she said, where did you do nothing wrong, honey? He said, in the closet in your bedroom. And she went in and he'd found their supply of vitamins and he'd opened all the bottles and poured them all out onto the floor. That's where he'd done nothing. But that's just we're just like children to Divine Mother. But if we accept that we are loved and are liked, that doesn't give us license to coast. But there's no reason to be upset about it either. We can't help our karma. We spend incarnations getting this confused. We've worked really hard at it. Earlier today, Isha Das quoted something that I love to quote. Jesus declares, for this hour was I born. Well, for this hour we're all of us born. We've worked so hard to get to here. We need to just be very happy about it and then go forward. Because fear of failure, of course, inhibits our ability to succeed also. Fair enough? Yeah. All right. The question is, what is karma? And the question is, if you're born with a disease, for example, is that the fault of your ancestors or is that your own karma? And that was in the Bible when Jesus saw the blind man who'd been blind since birth. Is it his own actions that caused him to be blind, the actions of his parents? It was the same question you just asked, so you're in really good company. Karma is cause and effect. Everything is interrelated in energy. There's a cause and effect. So nothing happens without there being a force behind it. But the material world is a manifestation of the energy universe, and which is a manifestation of the causal universe. The material world is not the cause. The material world reflects the energy that's come into it, which is to say that you have the genetic structure to have that disease because it was your karma to have that disease, so you chose to associate in a place where that disease would be manifested. But it is not the DNA that causes it, it's that you caused the DNA by your karma there. And this whole, I know it's very popular, ancestral karma and all of this, and it's true in the sense, well, Swami Kriyananda in his own autobiography, he describes his family, a little bit about his grandparents and about his parents and the context, and he uses the phrase, he says, I was born fully myself, and I describe this to show you what I chose to associate myself with. And it's just like a sentence like that. But what he's saying is that my consciousness, my jiva, my soul, my destiny brought me into these influences. These influences did not create my destiny. So it's really as simple as that. Another way Swamiji put it once, which was advice to parents, but it's very good. He said, the man and the woman biologically create the vehicle for the soul to live out its destiny. But the mother and the father do not create either the soul or its destiny. And so everything that comes along with the physical body is because it's karmically appropriate for you to have it. Now, this came up in our community with, let's see, when we had a lot of teenagers. There was this one man who had no children, and he was kind of everybody's uncle. He was a bit of a wild character himself, especially as a teenager, so he was really good with the teenagers. And he said one of the techniques he used with the teenagers was to be absolutely shocked by anything they did so they wouldn't escalate in order to get his attention. You went up on the roof. No, you really did. So they would feel like they'd done what they needed and didn't have to break the windows or whatever else they needed to do. But in the context of our community, when adolescents want to assert their independence, they often get angry with their parents. They start fighting, and it happens in our families too. So when the teenager says, I don't like the way you treat me, you're a terrible mother, and then the mother gets to say, not my fault, you chose me. And then the teenagers would go to my friend and say, I never would have chosen her. And sometimes he would feel, neither would I, so he didn't know what to say. So he went to Swami and said, what do I say? He said, because in fact, sometimes I wonder why they did chose that mother, but Swami said, you don't choose every single detail. There'll be some compelling reason why you'll be born into a family or into a particular situation. And then it becomes like a Venn diagram. Is that where the circles overlap in pieces? Where the rest of it may come with the part that you chose. Like you might come for the mother, and then the mother brings the father, and the father might bring other siblings. But they don't have a lot to do with you. They affect you, but they're not the reason. They're not the compelling karma, because it's just too complicated. You can't make everything part of your story. It's very reassuring to hear that. And sometimes you deliberately choose a place where you don't have a lot of karma, where you don't have a lot in common with them, because you didn't really come to be part of your biological family. You came for whatever was going to happen later. You see how much freedom it gives you? But there's always the operative force is your personal karma. And then you have to figure out what that karma is. You don't have to say, well, it's my karma, and therefore. You have to use your common sense. And you also have to use your own inner feelings. I don't have much association, so-and-so is a nice person, but I was there for my brother. Or the illness, this gave me the right body. Maybe I needed to play basketball, so I needed to be with really tall people. It could be as simple as that. Atman, who's 6.5 feet tall, and has a son who's very close to his height, and his son became a good competitive rower, the rowing team, and all the people who are really good at rowing, except for the little tiny one who calls the rowing, they're all super tall. And he talked about when he went to the meets, all the parents were as big as he was. He said, these are my people, But that could be a reason. Just that you want a particular physique. So you don't have to try to make yourself relate to something that isn't natural for you to relate to. But no, everything that happens to you, especially something like a disease, It's not necessarily a curse, though. You see, we think challenge equals bad. People say bad karma, that means challenging karma. And so what's the opposite of that? Good karma is when I get to just sit around and eat bonbons and nothing ever happens. Is that good? What's good about that? That's where you have to flip the whole thing over. We're here to grow. Bummer, I think. But what can we do? All right. I could take one more question and then we'll be done if there is a third one here. Oh, the question was judging others, people getting irritated with other people, and why do I do that? It always is about yourself, 100%. But some people are annoying. It's just a fact. But getting upset about it is optional. I have to say, honestly, Swami Kriyananda was exceedingly frank. He never... I'll stretch that a little farther. There was a woman who'd been very badly mistreated by someone else, seriously mistreated. And she was having a lot of trouble getting over it. And she came to Swami and said, everything that happened was just perfect. It was just what had to happen. He said, don't comfort yourself with a lie. He said, that person who hurt you behaved very badly. And so that's different than just saying people are who they are. But you can't make yourself stupid in order to make yourself safe or happy or nice. So it isn't about shining it on. Swami was exceedingly frank. But no matter how frank he was, he just saw things as they are. And reality was not either positive or negative. Reality was just what it was. Many, many years ago, there was a woman in our community who was very difficult. And she was also very insecure. And my friend Seva said, I wish so-and-so had more confidence in their personality. Swami said, please. He said, the only thing that makes them bearable is they don't have confidence in that personality. But Swami extended himself beyond what anyone would do to help them. That's who you are. And I'm here to help you. And it's not going to make any better to pretend that I don't see what you are. So it's very important not to get confused between clarity of vision and then allowing there to be some emotional aspect to that. You have no right to be what you like. I'm uncomfortable, therefore you should be different. Or most often, whatever we're uncomfortable with in other people, we're trying to expunge it from the universe because it's also inside of us. Just like that. I was very, very, very critical of other people's creative work. And I had a terrible block against writing. It came up earlier today, we were talking. And so in 2003, Swami finally got me by the collar and sat me down and basically said I needed to start writing a book. And I did write a book, and it was Swami Kriyananda as we have known him. It's a book of people's experiences. It's a nice book, I like it. And however, I announced to everyone that I was not going to do this and not going to do that. I'm going to write a book. It's hard for me to believe this, but I think I worked on it for 3 years. Now, I didn't work full time, but I worked intermittently. At the end of 3 years, I had not one usable sentence, not a single usable sentence. Because every time I'd write, I'd criticize it and I'd delete it. I think it was probably 1.5 years, actually, because by 2006, I'd published it. But the point was, and I began to realize toward the end, every single critical thought that I had projected out onto the world was just hovering on the horizon, and as soon as I started to create, it just started shooting at me. And when I had finally absorbed, much to my extreme dismay, all of the negativity I'd put out into the world, then I was able to go forward after that. And wowie zowie, that is a huge incentive. It's really simple. What you give out to others, you get back. And so you just ask yourself, is whatever pleasure I'm getting out of this worth it? And if you suffer a karmic return, you have no one to blame but yourself. And the other part of it is, it was so obvious to me, I was so insecure about being creative that I just had to make everybody terrible because somehow they gave me a 1/4 of an inch height. But it was not the best idea I ever had. I really don't recommend it, And it's just always about us. And I've been watching my mind very much a lot more lately, and I see that there's a habit. There's just a habit that wants to kvetch a little bit about things. Like, why? Because I've suffered the consequences, and I don't want to go into the astral world complaining about the doctor who took care of me at the end. It's just like I measure everything now. But I actually have done this all my life. I measure everything against my life review. I really recommend it. It's highly helpful. How will this play? How will this play in my life review? Because I'm going to see it again. And if I don't like it, why am I doing it? If it's not worth it to me, why am I doing it? Yeah. But it's the most important thing is just struggle manfully, resist. Even if you can't conquer, at least resist. In fact, Master says that. You can't always conquer delusion, but at least you can resist. And that'll help.